Safety Commission. And it's kind of through those lenses, I think, that the committee will approach how we go about, treating, space, commercial, the topic of this conversation today. There's a very careful balance that we need to strike between promoting the private sector ventures as well as, making sure that the consumers and the general public, is not harmed by that with regards to, the fact that, space flight is a very risky business. And, while you're absolutely right, Mike, that NASA has made things, seem fairly routine in terms of space flight, we should not forget that it's dangerous. And so when we talk about putting, everyday private citizens, even if they're signing up and signing all sorts of waivers, that's something that I think people should, be more aware of when they enter into these, this type of service. But with that being said, I just want to kind of, address some of the points that Mike initially threw out. First one being the U.S. government is the only buyer, but that's starting to change. I think that's absolutely true. There's recognition of that. There's definitely, I think you wouldn't have so many private sector ventures entering into this space when they recognize that the government's going to be the only customer. That's just really not sustainable. So there's got to be something in the market that the market sees as a potential. I know that was the case, easily, 10, 15 years ago with regards to, ELVs and, launch of private satellites. That market seems to have, shifted a bit, but I think there's potential for that to reemerge, and that's why more and more people are getting into it. Will there be a larger marketplace? I think NASA, with its COTS program, is trying to help, bootstrap that, and that's one of Dr. Griffin's, great concepts, great ideas that we fully support on Capitol Hill. And, if I just kind of want to, I might be taking away some of Jeff's comments, but, I want to cite, Section 901 of last year's authorization bill, which identifies, the sense of Congress regarding, commercial initiatives. If I may just take the opportunity here to, quote a couple of lines from that, sense of the Congress that a healthy and robust commercial sector can make significant contributions to the successful conduct of NASA's space exploration program. That's something that we absolutely believe in. I think when we have a more competitive marketplace, this is something that potentially NASA can get out of the business of doing these routine low Earth orbit, flights that we're investing, lots of money into, and potentially having the private sector fill that void. All that being said, I think that's, that's a very, that's a good goal. And right now, at least with regards to crew, that's a longer term goal. With regards to cargo, hopefully that's much shorter term. I think NASA's been pretty clear in indicating its support with that, and Congress has indicated as much. We're not going to be buying any more Progress flights, and so we're pretty much going to be reliant upon the private sector once shuttle stops flying. A year, 2 years, however long it's going to be. But there's definitely going to be a shift. Well, the other, I guess, the other point I want to address is this communications gap that Mike threw out. I don't really understand what you mean by a communications gap, and I'm sure that we can, have a bit more of a dialogue on this. But with regards to, the COTS program, there's a strong belief, and I don't really understand why we're not supporting it more. And I'm kind of speaking from my own personal point of view, not speaking for any members. But it seems like a really good deal for the government. It's milestone-based. We don't pay until, a company demonstrates their capability to do something. At that point, it totally makes sense to buy it because space is, it's risky. And, I think it's just a really good model. So from a conceptual standpoint, I don't think there's necessarily, any sort of disconnect or gap. So maybe, Mike, at some point we can, elaborate on that and try to clarify that. With that, I'm sure you've got lots of questions, so I'll try to leave as much of my time for that as possible.
I always applaud my majority counterpart.
Thanks, Chan.
Good.
Jeff, you're going to speak from down there?
I will, if that's all right. You need to give me permission first? If
Our next up is the senior statesman of space, Jeff Bingham, from the Commerce, Science and Transportation Subcommittee on Science and Space. And I've known Jeff for a couple of years, and One of my favorite Jeff stories is he likes to tell the story about John Denver coming in to testify in front of the committee back in the early '80s, I think, and he'd written a song. He wanted to be one of the first, I think, space tourists or something, and it was anyway. I wish it was on YouTube, because then I could point people to it. But anyway, take it away, Jeff.
Thanks. What you didn't say was that that was actually a song that he wrote about the Challenger accident, actually, and he'd come in and we'd keyed up my home recorder, which I brought in for the hearing, and he was going to play this song, and he testified, and then he sat down or knelt down in front of the tape deck and hit the button, and nothing happened. And I'm sitting up behind the dais with my boss, Senator Garn, and he says, Jeff, so I had to walk around, and the senator said, if it doesn't work, Jeff's fired. And we got it working, but that was an awkward moment. I've had many awkward moments in my career, and this is sort of one of them, because I was really impressed by the previous panel. I mean, I'm feeling really outclassed by you all. I mean, I heard a lot of very, very, very positive things. In a negative environment that we're facing right now, it was really good for me to hear a lot of that. And I was trying to draw some analogies. There were a lot of analogies made about hairy mammals. Some of you weren't here, but there were hairy mammals and dinosaurs. Furry mammals. Well, fur, hair. This is fur as well as hair. And dinosaurs. And I guess I'm sort of a mix of the two. I'm the woolly mammoth here, so representing the hill. But it really was good to hear the energy level and to see again the evidence of progress being made in this new field. So it was a good overview of the kind of combination of real and potential, and I see real potential in what we saw this morning or this afternoon earlier. I really don't have anything I would add to that, obviously. I'm here as much as anything, and nobody will believe this, but I'm really here to listen. I'm here as a consumer of ideas, because we need a lot of them right now, just along the lines of what the Augustine panel is doing. We need to look at everything possible that can enable this country to sustain itself in a human spaceflight capacity, because and frankly, we've got to sort of think along those lines before the Augustine report is available, because we got to write a bill. We want to write a bill, another authorization bill that people can quote, and in some cases quote and ignore both at the same time, which happens frequently. I'm not saying anything personal here. Some of you know exactly what I mean. But we need to do a bill, and we need to be thinking about what are the options for the future, because we're running out of time. This review should have started 6 months ago, and should have started 5 years ago. But in the new administration, it should have started at the beginning, and unfortunately it didn't. We are where we are, and that's what Norm Augustine said. We're going to start with where we are. And where are we? Where we are is heading for a cliff in human spaceflight and speeding up towards that cliff. We have a dead end potentially in two major areas, and that's not only transportation, but destination. In transportation, you go back and look at the 2005 Act, we initially introduced our bill and prohibited a gap in U.S. human spaceflight capability. It was against the law to have a gap in our draft. NASA, OSTP called, begged, cajoled, threatened, give us a break. So we said, okay, we'll make it the policy of the government. It's U.S. policy to have no gap in U.S. human spaceflight capability. But if you get within a year or so of the cessation of shuttle operations, and tell us what that gap might look like, how long it would be, and what we will do to help mitigate it, and what are the strategic implications of that. Well, last year in the bill, we revised that deadline and moved it up to 90 days after enactment of that bill, and we got that report